In fact, we signed up next year. We're going to do both the 5 and 10K because they do each race on a different day. They start off with the 5, then the 10, then the half, and then the full. Some people do
Recording
all
in
4
progress.
for a total of 48 miles.
Wow.
Yeah.
We have everybody, just FYI.
So everybody that is coming is here. That's what you're telling me?
Correct. We've got all of our members, finance members.
Awesome. I'm going to wait till
2 minutes ahead. So
yeah, I'll wait until exactly 9 o'clock since we know everyone's here, and we'll start at exactly 9 o'clock. Okay.
I'm gonna let you know we're all here.
It's amazing that everyone was early. And Richard, your trip looked incredible.
Oh my gosh! I was just telling them.
Amazing.
Yeah, that firework display from Epcot is the most unbelievable thing we've ever seen.
I've seen it before. Pretty amazing. The whole place is pretty amazing. But I still like Disneyland in LA better.
Yeah, I don't know. I can see why, but what was amazing is I asked questions, and Disney World is 40 square miles.
Wow.
That's what Disney owns.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he bought it for anywhere $4 to $11 an acre.
Wow. Well, the best part about going to Disney World instead of Disneyland is Epcot. That's really what makes the difference, right?
Yep. And Tower of Terror lived up to its reputation of Tower of Terror.
That's classic.
Is Darren online?
Darren won't be on today.
Darren will not be on today.
Okay. No, big. I was just going to tell him after being in, the various airports getting down there, Reno still has by far the cleanest bathrooms of all.
All right, guys, it's 9 o'clock. Let's do this. Let's call the meeting to order. Let's do it. We'll call the meeting to order right now at exactly 9 o'clock on, I believe it's January the 11th. And we will start with the roll call, please.
Okay. Trustee Rose.
I am here, and I am out of practice on these Zoom things, so bear with me today.
Trustee Cunningham.
I'm here.
Trustee Giannoli.
Here.
And Trustee Jay.
Present.
I see I have a chat message from Trustee Kramer saying he's online, but not yet a panelist. Can we get him promoted?
I'm responding to him, but only finance members are promoted to panelists.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Thank you so much. At this time, we'll take public comment, please.
We have no public comment.
Item number 3, approval of the minutes, December 7th, 2021, Finance and Business Development Committee meeting minutes were in your packet. Does anybody have questions, changes, concerns, or can we see a motion?
Richard J. move to accept as presented.
Jennifer Cunningham, second.
Any further discussion on the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, seeing none, that motion carries unanimously. And that will take us right into items for recommendation for approval by the full board at the January 13th board meeting. This is item number 5.1, authorization for the president CEO to negotiate final terms and execute a 5-year non-exclusive advertising program concession license with Lamar Airport Advertising Company for the management and operation of the airport advertising program concession at the Reno Tahoe International Airport with a minimum estimated contract value of $2,864,583. And I believe we will have a presentation by Shauna Carpenter.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. Can you please confirm that you can see the presentation and hear me okay?
I can see it and I can hear you.
Great, thank you. All right, good morning, Chair Rose, trustees. As you know, my name is Shauna Carpenter, Concessions Manager with the Airport Authority, and I am presenting our recommendation for the 5-year license with Lamar Airport Advertising Company for the management and operation of the advertising concession at RNO. I'd like to introduce the Lamar representatives joining us today. You can't see the full panel here, but we should have Shauna Forsyth, the Director of Business Development, Chris Trayers, who is the Vice President and General Manager, and Sandy Clark, currently in the role of Market Manager, who will be the Reno General Manager should this action be approved. This is in support of strategic priorities number 5 for financial diversification and growth, and 6 to provide a positive environment and experience for all. Before we get into the specifics of the current recommendation, I'd like to take a quick moment to review the background of the program, which has been operated by Clear Channel Airport since February of 2015. Clear Channel was brought on through an RFP and originally had a 5-year contract with 2 2-year options. The initial 5-year term of the license with Clear Channel expired January 31st of 2020. And the board approved a 4-year extension of the license in March of 2020 as requested by Clear Channel. If you can recall that far back, the board actually took action right before the pandemic started. It was, in fact, the week before we started seeing impacts to air travel, which led to Clear Channel declining to execute the extension with the uncertainty of the ongoing impacts of the pandemic. Clear Channel then requested some changes to the terms, which had been established in the original RFP, as well as their initial contract and the extension amendment that the board had approved. These requests and the delay in executing the extension resulted in the RTAA notifying Clear Channel that the extension offer had was expiring in December of 2020. Therefore, Clear Channel has remained in month-to-month holdover since. And a 30-day notice of termination of the license per the contractual terms was sent to Clear Channel on December 30th of 21, with the license termination to be effective January 31st, 2022. So as a result of all of these challenges, we started discussing the possibility of bringing the program in-house. There had not been many, if any, RFPs for concessions related to this during the pandemic. And with the uncertainty, we didn't know advertising market and possible in-house program. So the RFP was released on July 19th of last year. It was published on the Nevada Government e-Marketplace, or NGEM, the RTAA's website, RGJ, and prominent airport organizational websites like AAAE, ACI, and Airport Experience News. The solicitation was emailed directly to those on our interested parties list. Have knowledge of the Reno Sparks advertising market. As noted in the board memo and the RFP, we included a more extensive scope of services to manage, operate, and coordinate all phases of the advertising program, but we've listed a few of the key services here. which include to improve existing local advertiser agreements and relationships, and have a focus of attracting new relevant advertisers. It was also important that the business plans proposed included their approach to effectively serve advertisers while providing maximum revenues for the airport, and a plan to involve and promote R&O tenants. Of the 3 submissions received, there were 2 proposals deemed responsive, and they were from Departure Media and Lamar Airport Advertising. At this point, we took a look at the proposals and again evaluated the potential for an in-house program. However, based on the strength of the 2 proposals we did receive, the selection committee decided to take the in-house option out of consideration and move forward with reviewing and interviewing both Departure and Lamar. We have a quick overview here of the business terms proposed. Again, the minimums established in the RFP were a $500,000 minimum annual guarantee and a 55% concession fee or revenue share to the RTAA. And the minimum capital investment was not specifically defined. So although the Departure's proposal of 60% concession fee compared to Lamar's 55%, so it was a little bit higher on paper, but Departure did request multiple exceptions to reduce revenue for commission fees for ad agencies and a local sales rep, as well as some expense charges and non-collectibles, which essentially resulted in a modified gross or more like a net revenue, as you see noted there. In addition to the higher MAG proposed and larger capital investment by Lamar, they also provided a clear implementation plan and proved more in-depth airport experience with a larger airport portfolio. Lamar also far exceeded the expectation to have knowledge of the Reno Tahoe area by having already established a local manager. Sandy Clark, the general manager expected to oversee Reno if approved, has extensive knowledge of not only the area, but she also has direct experience with R&O. She has 30 years of experience in sales and marketing and holds a high level of authority with Lamar. Therefore, in further evaluating the proposals and interviewing both firms, the selection committee unanimously selected Lamar to recommend to the board. A little bit specific to Lamar here, they have been the leader in outdoor commercial advertising for nearly 120 years, with operations spanning over 260 markets in North America, and have grown to a now publicly traded corporate enterprise valued at over $11 billion. Over the past 20 years, Lamar has expanded its airport advertising portfolio to 25 airports nationwide and currently employ approximately 3,000 employees across North America. They've also managed the advertising program at McCarran since 1999. And in addition to experience with gaming advertisers, they also have contracts in Boise and Salt Lake City. So they're very familiar with ski resorts and some of the more seasonal advertising markets. Moving on to the capital investment here, you'll see Lamar has committed a minimum of $255,500, and we'll walk through some of the assets here expected to be upgraded. First, you'll see this will consist of replacing all digital monitors in the baggage claim. This is a 12 monitor network here, as well as the 4 monitor network in the connector. And so it would be replacing all of those digitals. And next, as all current outdated edge-lit displays in the connector and in baggage claim will be replaced and possibly consolidated a bit with these vibrant lit tension fabric displays. And as for new digital, Lamar has proposed a new vertical digital screens at the turning points of both the B and C concourses. And in partnership with Smart City Media, they will update the existing Y Reno floor unit and baggage claim with an interactive display. This will include touchscreen technology and a tap or QR link to download current information that travelers can take with them. In partnership with Reach TV, they've proposed an additional $85,000, bringing the total capital proposed to $340,000. This portion of the of the proposed capital investment with Reach TV would consist of a new 15-monitor hold room network displaying a variety of entertainment content featuring localized and national programming and offering up to 6 minutes per hour for traveler messages, concession promotions, or advertising sales. But if you recall, we previously had a hold room network through CNN under the Clear Channel agreement. It was removed in April of 2021 when CNN Airports exited the market, and at the time, Clear Channel did not have a replacement solution. So we removed the monitors and have not really received any negative feedback since. We believe this is largely due to the shift in passengers engaging in their own content on their personal devices. However, we have received and staff is reviewing a detailed proposal from Reach TV, but we're holding off on this part of the capital until we evaluate the demand. So we plan to include the option in their agreement, subject to the RTAA's approval. Moving on to the fiscal impact here, the minimum contract value of $2.86 million is based on the minimum annual guarantee of $625,000. So this is subject to annual adjustments, but the $625,000 minimum annual guarantee will begin July 1st of 2022 to align with the RTAA's fiscal year. The MAG is subject, as I said, to annual adjustments based on actual revenue performance. But for purposes of establishing the minimum contract value, we've included the figures here for the duration of the contract. Again, the MAG will start in July, hence the lower amount included here for year one. With that, it is recommended that the board authorize the president and CEO to negotiate final terms and execute a 5-year non-exclusive advertising program concession license with Lamar Airport Advertising Company for the management and operation of the airport advertising program concession at the Reno Tahoe International Airport with a minimum estimated contract value of $2,864,583. Thank you.
Shauna, thank you so much for the presentation. That was fantastic. Trustee Cunningham was actually on the committee for this, and we appreciate all her hard work and all of Shauna's hard work. It looks incredible, but I'm going to throw it over to Trustee Cunningham first, since you were on the committee. Is there anything you'd like to add or share with us, or any questions for Shauna?
I do have some things, and I'd like to just further, I think, punctuate some of the points that Shauna brought up that made Lamar stand out. Is everything okay?
We can hear you.
Okay, good. I think the committee that I served on, we were really impressed with truly the national reach that Lamar has and the depth of their experience. They did exceed the requirements and the qualifications. One area that Shauna didn't mention, which was a nice area to consider, which is the corporate culture of Lamar and their commitment to diversity and inclusion kind of mirrors that of the airport. So in bringing on a new partner, it's very desirable to have a similar foundation in terms of that. Their Las Vegas airport contract since 1999 it can be very beneficial and fruitful for us down the road. And that also means, though, that they truly understand the gaming client and customer that hopefully the advertiser that we'll have. And it's a different kind of animal, as we know. And then the ski resorts, their experience in Boise and some of the other West Coast markets with seasonal offerings, special events, ski resorts. So bringing on a partner that understands these kind of nuances was very important for us. Their capacity with staff ensures a lot of coverage, and they talked about cross-training staff. So Sandy, who will come to Reno and be the airport's point person, there's more than just a point person. There's a depth of staff available to help the Reno Tahoe group. And finally, I think the other note I wrote down was they have a very robust national sales team, and they plan to work hand in hand with the Reno team to identify prospects nationally. I think Sandy probably has a really good handle on regional and sort of West Coast. She may also have national, but they wanted to also provide their national sales team to help bring on some new advertisers. So I think we felt very comfortable with Lamar and that they brought quite a bit to the table. So I'm excited about this shift and change, and also their experience with concourse planning may be helpful down the road for this airport as well. So those are my comments.
Sandy, we're sorry that we couldn't meet you in person this morning, but it's nice to see you online. Hopefully we'll meet you in person in the near future. Jennifer, thank you so much. Trustee Cunningham, I'm sorry. Thank you so much for your comments. I appreciate that. Do any other trustees have questions for Shauna or Sandy or anyone else?
No, great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions either. I think it all sounds very, very exciting. So Trustee Cunningham, since I know you're in favor of it, would you like to make the motion?
If I could just add a few words.
Absolutely. We can hear you. Oh, she
Okay,
froze.
thank you. Am I back?
You are back.
Okay. I think one of the things you left out is how could you go wrong with a Shauna and a Shauna?
There you go.
She and I laugh about that all the time. It's hi Shauna, it's Shauna.
Double trouble.
Double trouble. I just want to say thank you very, very much. We are so honored and so proud to be joining you with this concession, and we absolutely bring that national presence. But we've got such a focus on local sales. And I think the point you made about understanding gaming is very, very pertinent in your market. You've got a wealth of industries there and economic drivers that can be brought into the airport and should be brought into the airport. But we also totally understand gaming. And you're right, it is a different animal, and it's something that we've worked with for decades. And I assure you that we come into this with a full, open partnership mentality. We see ourselves as an extension of your staff to the extent that you would like us to be. And we just can't wait to hit the ground running and go. And Sandy definitely brings a lot of history and knowledge to the market. So we are looking forward to this, and we thank you very, very much.
And Shauna, I'm sure that you already know this, and as much as we appreciate our gaming partners and their contribution to our community as well as to our airport, we definitely want a diversified advertising look in our airport, which I'm sure you guys discussed in your original meetings.
We sure did. And there's a wealth of opportunity there that we did not see tapped. And Sandy's out there, and she's going to be mining for that from day one.
Perfect. Did that spur any questions with anybody before we move forward on Trustee Cunningham's motion? Yes, Trustee Chinoli.
Just exciting to hear the new way that we're going to go, and it looks very promising. So excited to see how it all works out.
Thank you.
One last thing, having just got back from traveling in Orlando and a few other, I think this is going to match more of what we need for our community and kind of bring us up to that level of being now a medium-sized airport hub.
Yep, agree. All right, Trustee Cunningham, it's all yours.
Okay, and also to piggyback on Richard Trustee Jay's, a level of professionalism, and I'm very pleased with that. So with that, I move that we authorize the President and CEO to negotiate the final terms and execute a 5-year non-exclusive advertising program concession license with Lamar Airport Advertising Company for the management and operation of the airport advertising program concession at the RTIA with a minimum estimated contract value of $2.864583 million. Thank you.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10.
Yeah,
I will second that motion. Do we have any further discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Right?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and we will take this forward to the board on Thursday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you for
Thank
being
you.
here, both Sandy and Shauna. Thank you very much.
Thank
And
you.
Shauna, thank you for the presentation. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, you guys, that is going to take us to 5.2, authorization to amend management guidelines, section 13, classification of exempt positions. And we are going to hear from Mr. Larry Harvey.
Morning,
don't s-
trustees.
Oh,
Thank
there
you,
he
Chair
is.
Rose. I apologize. I had a problem on the last few Zooms. My camera's not working, so.
That's okay. We can
this
hear
is
you.
good I get. I'm always working in the dark, so this works well for me.
So in
Good
other
morning.
words, he's changing his look from one to another and he won't reveal it yet.
Maybe that's it. That's it.
Well, and Mr. Harvey, I was seriously considering using that excuse this morning too, so I could sleep a little later, but I decided to brush my hair.
I did brush my hair. I'm just sad you can't see it. It looks great.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you so much, Chair and trustees and all the staff on. I'm here to, we've been looking, we had some challenges this last year, as you know. We've had a couple of years where we are not following the normal process and staffing and people. And we had some challenges because of one of the things in our guidelines that says that the board must approve the number of employees each year. And that causes some challenges for us during the year, and especially when we went through some of the challenges we've been through recently. And we look forward as these new projects we're putting on and how we need to be more agile and flexible in how we are arranging staff and personnel. So what we're looking at is, as you can see by the memo, we are asking to take out some provisions about the number, but also retain that the board is still approving an overall budget and personnel numbers and lives. And we'll also have to have any increase in that number would have to go through the board for approval. But actual number of complement is something that allows us the flexibility to be, again, more agile. I'll give an example. We had a challenge in a huge increase in our parking this year. And we needed to be agile and allow a few more positions to get them through this huge uptick. And to do that, frankly, it's sort of some chess moves on our part and our team of saying, okay, well, we won't fill these two positions here, so I can do that. Even though we had the budgetary money for it, there's this number that caused us a lot of internal conflict to make this happen. So Darren asked that we do some research. I know Ann also worked on that as well on the language and helping us with the research. Can't tell you why or when this came into play, why the number of employees was added, because you're already approving the total budget and the dollars and the money, which is the normal process for the board. So we don't know why this specific thing came in. We're asking that it be amended to give Darren and the team a little more flexibility. Again, you have total control of the money, the most important part, how much we're going to spend in these areas. But as we move forward and look at new projects and things, might give us a place where we maybe eliminate a position, create a new one, or do whatever we need to do to stay within the guidelines. Know that internally, we have to keep control of these positions. So we do that internally between my team, especially Randy and the finance team. So we have to keep those in link internally. We just didn't think it was the wise thing to keep it as part of the board's approval process. So because it basically somehow hamstringed the team when we were trying to make changes internally. Randy knows he won't let us do it if we don't have the money. But together, I think it would be very helpful if we were able to make this change. And Darren, I believe will bring in this forward at the board meeting, but wanted me to talk about it today. Any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Mr. Carlton, would you mind just weighing in on this from your standpoint, please?
Yeah, certainly. Good morning.
Sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No worries. Good morning, Chair Rose, members of the committee, Randy Carlton, CFO. As Larry indicated, this will authorize the CEO to have a bit more flexibility in the management of the day-to-day affairs of the authority, in particular having the authorization to put the personnel where they are best needed. We have the control in place on the funding aspect that is going to continue to be approved by the board whenever we need to increase the amount that we need to for the operations of the organization. So I'm comfortable with the level of controls, and I think this helps the CEO and the executive team to manage those resources more effectively by putting the people in the places that are needed as the operation unfolds throughout the year. Keep in mind too that it can swing the other way, where we do not necessarily need to fill vacancies in a particular area, and we reassess the needs of that particular organization when a vacancy occurs. So, this is something that the executive team supports, Darren supports, and we're asking for the Finance Committee's recommendation to the board for approval.
Does anyone have any questions? Trustee Jay, I'm sure you have something to say about this. No? You're on mute.
No, it makes sense. I mean, it looks good. I'm happy with it.
Okay. Anyone else?
I
Comment. This is Trustee Cunningham. So sorry, Trustee Gianelli, for stepping on you.
No worries.
I just want to say, yeah, this is what a great proposal, and I think it's super important that you have the agility, and we trust the CEO and executive staff. We hold you to the budget, and so how you best decide to allocate it depending on the situation that you're in and staffing or whatever you need the money for. I think it's a really good change, so I'm fully in support of it.
I agree with you. Trustee Gianoli?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, with the times we're dealing with now, where things are changing kind of rapidly, that you need to be mobile and be able to do what you need to do to manage the organization.
Okay, I'd love to entertain a motion.
Move to
Richard J.
approve.
Second, Richard J.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion 5.2 carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Larry, Mr. Harvey.
Thank you,
Quick
everyone.
quick question from Lori.
Okay.
Who was the mover?
Lisa Gianoli,
Thank you.
second, Trustee Jay. Okay. We are going to move right on forward to 5.3, which is approve the budget augmentation of the fiscal year 2021-2022 operating expense budget by the amount of $995,000 to a total of $80,926,626. And I believe we are going to hear from Mr. Kovacs. Alex, if you're talking, we cannot hear you. You are on mute.
Good morning. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I feel like I'm in one of those commercials advertising mobile phones. Can you hear me now? All right. Good morning, Chair Rose, trustees, staff. For the record, Alex Kovacs, Director of Finance, with a presentation here on the mid-year budget review for fiscal year 21-22. Starting off with a little bit of background here on our budget process. The current budget, the official budget, was adopted by the board on May 20th, 2021. And any substantial change to the overall adopted budget has to be done via board action. We do have a mid-year budget process internally, where each of the departments has an opportunity to review their current operations, potential needs that were not anticipated during the original budget process. And we have an ability to also look at the airline traffic and the operating and non-operating revenues that we have seen year to date and revise that forecast moving forward. We also have an obligation to our signatory airlines to have a mid-year airline rate review with them And we will be meeting with them later this month on January 28th, proposing a rate decrease when it comes to the landing fees, which is 100% cost recovery, decreasing from $3.23 to $2.85. You will hear a little bit more as I move through the presentation on maybe why that makes sense at this point. Starting off with the budget review as of the first 5 months of the fiscal year. This is somewhat familiar to you most likely because it's typically included in the operating statement every month. And a couple of highlights here, you see the airline revenues outperforming budget by about 16%. The main reason here is the increase in airline activity. Both landed weight and the number of in-plane passengers are coming in significantly above what we were expecting during the budget process. Also, the non-airline revenues, that's mainly due to the increase in in-plane passengers. You see an increase of approximately $5 million above the forecast. What's the reason there, right? That's usually the question. And what I can point out is, first of all, parking revenues. I'm sure that you have seen that every parking spot, many cases, many weekends is taking on the airport property is outperforming budget so far by approximately 2.2 million. Auto rental is also doing very well in the current fiscal year, outperforming in the first 5 months by about $2 million. Non-operating revenues, you see somewhat of a decrease here, and the main reason there is the CARES Act that we were anticipating to use in the current fiscal year. We just did not request the amounts that we were anticipating just because we're seeing an increase in the other operating revenues, specifically the non-airline revenues. So we want to make sure that we're watching that closely, and you will see a significant increase here actually in the month of January because we just received from the FAA our portion of debt service that we requested. As you know, in December, we were able to pay off all of our debt. A couple of other categories of non-operating revenues that we have are the customer facility charges or CFCs that are applied for the car rental activity, and then also the PFCs or passenger facility charges. That's that $4.50 that you may see on your ticket if you buy a ticket originating out of RNO. Operating expenses, around 2.2 million below budget so far for the first 5 months. All major expense categories here are below budget with the exception of utilities, which is just a couple of $1,000s actually above budget. That could have something to do with the seasonality of expenses, and obviously we're in the middle of winter, so it's most likely due to that. If you look at the days cash on hand, we're outperforming both last fiscal year and then also the current year budget, right around 514 days. I talked about the airline activity for the first 5 months, and as you can see here, in-plane passengers, 44% over budget. Significant reason why you see the car rental revenues and also parking revenues outperforming budget pretty well. The cost per enplanement currently is estimated around $5. Just to give you a sense how that compares to the budget, during the budget process, we were thinking closer to $9.50, $9.57 to be more precise. I had to throw in a graph here because it's a finance presentation, and what would that be without a graph? So to give you kind of a sense here what you're looking at, right? The black line, which looks kind of like a dark purple here, I'm moving my cursor on it. I'm not sure if that can be seen or not, but that represents last fiscal year's actual results. You can see here an uptick from March on through June. Then the blue line represents the current fiscal year budget. And then the top line, which thankfully, as I mentioned earlier, we're outperforming budget substantially. You see a lighter purple kind of overlapping a red line. So the first 5 months through November, that's the purple overlapping the red. That's actual, and the forecast being the same number. And then moving forward from November on, you can see the red line representing the updated forecast for the current fiscal year. There's obviously an unanticipated funding need. That's the reason we're talking about a potential budget augmentation here. The total is around 3.7 million. I broke it out here in the different categories. Personnel around 582,000, O&M 914,000. We do have a couple of fixed asset requests, but the majority of the request comes from the capital project category, right around 2.1 million. You saw that our overall operating expenses are significantly below budget, but what I would say that we can count on at this point, this early in the year, would be the identified personnel-related savings that are around 900,000. Those are due to vacancy savings so far for the first 5 months. We are requesting an O&M budget augmentation of 995,000. Our current operating revenues, so for the first 5 months, are $6.2 million above the adopted budget. Now I'm going to go through those requests to kind of give you a sense of why are we asking for a budget augmentation. So I talked about the personnel funding requests. You see here 9 new positions. The majority of them come from the operations side and public safety. We have 4 new positions from landside operations. As I mentioned earlier, our parking is booming. We're outperforming budget. We have a need there for additional personnel, and that's the reason you see 4 brand new positions here. There are 2 positions that are asking to be unfrozen. The airside operations manager that was frozen in the current budget, and also a police officer. Both of those are approved positions in the current fiscal year, but they were not funded. So that's the reason we're asking to fund those at mid-year. There are also a couple of additional positions that are related to the operations department. The director of operations and emergency manager, both of those are new positions. And by the way, when you see the numbers here in the additional request column, all of these new positions are funded for or anticipated to be funded for a time frame ranging from 3 to 5 months, because obviously they're not recruiting that yet at this point. So as we move into the recruitment process, depending on how long that's going to take, they're not 6 months anticipated funding need for all of these. There's also an upgrade proposed by the marketing department for a manager of community and culture engagement. That's a reclassification of an existing position. And then also adding the government affairs manager in marketing. There are 2 new positions proposed by the IT department. One is a system analyst and the other one an information security manager.
Alex, can I ask you a question, please?
Absolutely.
On that last slide. So the manager of community and culture engagement, so that's an existing person that's getting a promotion, is that what we're saying? It's not a new position?
Yes.
So the 21,000 is the addition, 22,000, I'm sorry, is the additional pay?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any information on, and I'm really asking out of sheer curiosity, community and culture engagement? Could you further explain a little bit?
Chair Rose, that's a very good question.
Okay, I hear you.
I have a question as well when you're done.
Okay, I can definitely gather some more information on this, unless we have Brian on the call to answer that question. I can gather more information and share it either via email or at the board meeting on Thursday.
Yes, at the board meeting on Thursday is totally fine. I don't want anyone to spend a lot of time on it. I was just very, very curious about what that would entail. It sounds very interesting to me. I think that was my only question on this slide. Trustee Jay, did you have something?
Yeah, just real quick, that 22,100, is that with or without benefits?
All of these are including benefits. So
okay.
each one of these lines that you see here are including all cost.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I thought
So-
so.
Thank you.
So a police officer's pay is $51,300. Is that, am I reading that correctly?
Yes, you are reading that correctly. Probably an anticipated 5 months are covered there. So
Okay,
both the pay and the benefits that would be associated with that one position, probably about 5 months.
okay,
Prorated.
perfect.
Prorated,
It's
absolutely.
prorated, exactly.
Yes.
Partial.
Yes.
That's
All
where I
of
was
these
getting
are.
a little confused. Okay, perfect.
Sorry, I
Perfect.
should
Okay,
have
thank
mentioned
you.
that.
That's okay.
It's 2022. That's your first mistake of the year. You're okay.
Please proceed, Mr. Kovacs.
Thank you. Moving on to the O&M request, not including personnel, obviously. First one here comes from the landside department for those rented shuttles that you might have seen around, 380,000. We did have, and we continue to have, a parking issue here that also you can see it from a revenue perspective, but that comes with an additional funding need to rent some of the shuttles and be able to kind of transport people back and forth from their cars. There's also a credit card fee of an additional $70,000 because, again, we have more volume that was not anticipated during the budget process more than a year ago. There's a QTA water line repair needed at this point, anticipated around $65,000. Just to give you a sense of what the funding source is for this, we are actually planning on spending CFC funds to pay for it. There are a couple of other consultants here that you see, one from the People, Culture, and Equity Department, $60,000, and a proposed roof assessment from the Engineering Department for another $60,000. We have a number of requests from the Fire Department. The first you see here on this slide for turnouts, and I'm going to move quickly here to the next one. There's also some additional training that's requested and some additional uniform expenses listed here for the Fire Department. There's also some change management and training requested by Larry and his team for an additional $15,000. I don't plan on going into a lot of detail on these unless you have specific questions, and then I'm able to answer those now, or I may request some help from our executive team. Moving on to the fixed assets and equipment requests that we have, there are a couple of items that came forward from the STED department for a total of close to $50,000. You see here a 700-gallon sprayer tank and a multi-purpose unit for a portable generator and other great things that that unit can do for staff efficiency. And then also a TCRU device package coming from the facilities department. That way we're able to produce our disinfectant solution in-house. And that can be, and most likely will be, paid with CARES Act funding. Capital project requests. I mentioned earlier, this is the most significant request that you see here in front of you. Some of these are a request to be able to enter into an agreement with the companies that we're planning on cooperating with, and they're not necessarily going to be spent in the current fiscal year. Biggest example is what you see here as the first line item, the ticketing hall HVAC pre-package. There is a long lead time to be able to purchase this equipment, and that's the reason you see a request here for the $725,000. But as I mentioned, most likely we will not be able to pay that in the current fiscal year because the payment will be done upon receipt of the equipment. Oshkosh ARF Class 4 vehicle requested by the fire team, $460,000. Not much to talk about here yet, just because you will hear after my presentation from the fire chief, Mr. Dale Carnes, and he will go into detail as to why we need that and what it will be used for. There's an economy remote flag lot, parking lot development designed to kind of give you a sense of where that is located. I'm not sure how many of you know what that flag lot represents. Staff refers to it that way, but it is, the purpose of that is to develop an economy remote lot. It's sort of across the street from the hotels right next to the airport. So right across the street from Hyatt. $380,000. What this represents is just the design cost, and then also some of the city fees to start the project. You will see a larger amount, right around $4 million in next fiscal year's budget for the construction portion of that. TSA Blue Lot parking lot rehab, $300,000. This is an additional amount to what was included already in the current fiscal year budget. That was around 1.3 million. So a $1.6 million total for that project. We also have a couple of projects here requested that I would call somewhat enabling projects for design services. The first one here, you see the PC Air and ground power unit, $120,000. And I'm going to skip here down by one, the Reno Stat Taxiway A and apron reconstruction design. Both of those will be most likely refunded by the FAA, because once the design is complete and the project qualifies for FAA funding, the construction portion will be funded through FAA, and then they also promised reimbursement for the design fees. We also have an airfield drainage issue that's somewhat of an emergency at this point. So you see here the design portion estimated at $50,000 for it. Moving into kind of giving you a sense of what the whole year will hopefully or potentially look like by the end of the current fiscal year. So starting off with the operating revenue, you see here an increase in airline revenues just slightly over budget. When I talked about the first 5 months, you saw actually a larger increase there. So we do have an ambitious, I would say, somewhat forecast for the current fiscal year. So we're anticipating substantially more landed weight than what the budget was, and that's the reason we're actually asking our airline partners to pay less when it comes to the landing fee. So we're decreasing that from the $3.23 to $2.85. You may be wondering, was that impact to an airline? So if you think about landing of a 737-700 that has approximately 128,000 approved landed weight, that would be a $48 difference per landing cost there. So we're anticipating not to need the $3.23 per 1,000 pounds. So that's the reason we're decreasing that landed weight fee, or landing fee, I should say. Non-airline revenues, we're anticipating to be approximately 6.9 million above budget by the end of the fiscal year, potentially even higher than that, but just the 6.9 million, to give you a sense where that comes from, the majority comes from the parking operations, and around 3 million, so around 4 million comes from there, and over 3 million additional revenue anticipated for the car rental concession. Non-operating revenues, you see here a significant increase over the current year budget. The main reason there is the CARES Act funding that we will be receiving as a reimbursement of the debt service payment that we made last month. So that's the reason you see an increase there. Also, PFC revenues and CFC revenues are outperforming budget. Our operating expenditures, this just shows the increase that we're asking the board to approve compared to the current fiscal year approved budget. So just $995,000 above what the original budget was. Debt service, you see an increase here. That's due to, again, paying off the debt. So the annual debt service was $2,250,000. By paying off the entire debt was almost 11 million. So that's the reason you see that increase there. A significant increase, I would say, in the forecasted in-plane passengers. As you can see, we were planning on around 1.5 million in the current year budget. But based on what we have seen for the first 5 months, and then also what the published schedules by all of the airlines are telling us, we're anticipating around 2 million in-plane passengers in the current fiscal year, just about 33% above the approved budget. Landed weight, again, an increase right around 20% above the budget. And that translates also obviously in a signatory cost per employment reduction compared to both last fiscal year and then also the current year budget. So we're anticipating to end the year around $7.33. That brings me to the recommendation, which is to increase the operating budget by the amount of $995,000 to a total of $80,926,626. A mouthful there, sorry. As you're looking at this number, you may be wondering, why is it about $30 million higher than the 50 that I was just talking about operating expenses? I'm trying to show this number as the number that is actually being represented on the state budget forms, and it includes the amortization of $30 million that was included in the budget. So obviously that's a non-cash item there. I know I went through a lot of information, and I do have a couple of slides here just to talk about things that we're looking at moving forward, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have so far.
Does anyone have any questions? My only question was, how did we get from 50 million to 80 million? So thank you for that clarification. Does anyone else have any questions?
That was my question. That was my question as well. Wait a minute, grew 30 million suddenly.
There is a question in the chat, Jennifer.
Okay. I cannot see the chat, so I'm not sure who it is.
Okay.
Oh, I just found it. Okay, there we go.
I don't know if that's related.
Looks like it to Brian.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't see a question in the chat.
that was a question out to Brian Culpin, if
Brian,
he's
yeah.
going to be available to address the question about the position that was raised earlier. We
The
can
cultural
either do
position.
that now, if he's ready and available to do so. If not, we could do that at the board meeting.
Brian, are you there? Okay, let's just do it on Thursday at the board meeting. It's not an important part of this vote, so that's totally fine. Does anyone else have any?
I'm here if I can be heard.
Oh, Brian, I can hear you now.
Sorry,
We
I
were
was,
just,
I was
we
trying
were
to get in
just-
earlier and I failed somehow. so-
no worries at all. We were just mostly curious as to what the new cultural position would entail.
Right, that is one of my existing staff members who would be raised to a management level position. And they would be managing the art program that we're putting together. That would be the additional duties that would be added, as well as much more enhanced community outreach. Community outreach has pretty much gone to a standstill in COVID. And we know that that will change. And we do have to get out, especially with the construction project that we have coming, making sure we are fully engaged with every Rotary Club, Kiwanis Club, Chamber Group, leadership group in this community, and getting Darren out there and some of our key executive members really on those road shows. That's a really important thing. And then also bringing that to the airport. As COVID wanes, we'll be wanting to bring people into the airport for lunches and tours. These are things that we used to do, which have definitely been put on hold. So that would be a big part of what this job does, but the art program is a key element in that. The job description is not fully written yet. I'm in the process of doing that, but definitely a needed position. And also there'll be a transfer with one of my team members out of my department as part of that construction project. So we're filling some gaps and adding some duties.
Perfect. Does anyone have any questions? Trustee Jay, you have a question?
Yeah, quick question, Brian, and you might not have the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. You mentioned art and, going forward with our new art program. How much do you envision their job managing the art program that we have?
That will come through, especially in the master plan that's being written by Forecast Art from the last board meeting, as that was discussed. But it will be a large element of their job, probably at least 25% of what they do will be engaged in the art program. We'll have the committee that we're forming, which would be an ad hoc committee with board members as well as people from the art community being engaged in that. It'll be the recruitment of the artists, the installation of the art, putting in performance art into the airport that hasn't existed before, and managing the existing gallery. So there's a lot of pieces there.
Trustee Cunningham, you have a question?
Great, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Brian, since we have you on the phone, I was curious with the governmental affairs manager position. Is that a new position? And part B is that a position that the airport has had in the past?
That would be a new position. And in my time at the airport, we have not had that formally identified internally like this. It was usually shared among several different team members. But when we did run things more in-house before, we were pretty successful with that. But it's just taking a look at all the responsibilities that we have and knowing the dollars that are out there that we have to seek to complete the $1 billion project. We need hands-on government affairs from the local level to the state level to the federal level, and having that all coordinated, really seeking all the dollars that are out there and the government communication that we're going to need. That's where this position comes from.
That's great. I fully support it. I think it's, with changing times, I think it's a good idea, and certainly will be a busy position. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Giannola, you have a question too?
I'm just going back to Alex's presentation and just an overarching question. We're really not seeing any decline in our customer base because of this Omicron thing. It doesn't appear.
We're not seeing that at this point. No.
That's what I didn't think so. Okay, just a general question, because it doesn't look like our revenues are going to diminish.
Alex, are we seeing it in bookings going forward?
I don't think so.
Well, based on the schedules, we're not seeing that. But as you have seen the last couple of weeks, there were a lot of cancellations. And that's the reason I would say that potentially our numbers that you have seen here for the forecast, especially the airline traffic forecast, may be a little bit optimistic. But we will see how the year progresses and if we have to make any changes as we move along. But at this point, the published schedules by all of the airlines that operate at RNO, they don't reflect any kind of decreases at this point.
Alex, could you just clarify for me what happens when an airline cancels a flight? So for example, the day that Southwest canceled all of their flights due to the wind, do all of the passengers that had booked that day, do they get refunds? Does the airport lose 100% of their revenue that they would have received from those flights? How does that actually impact the passenger and the airport?
I'm going to try to answer the airport side first, because I might know a little bit more about that than the impact on the passenger. So in theory, if those people would not fly at all, so they would not be rebooked, or they were to drive somewhere else, then in theory, potentially the airport would lose out on the revenue from those passengers. However, in most cases, they just get rebooked on a different flight, and we would see an increase in the number of seats occupied in those flights going forward as compared to what we would have normally seen. As far as the passengers' impact on how they are impacted by a cancellation, my understanding is that the first intent is to get them rebooked. And if that cannot happen, then there would be potentially a refund. But I think that all airlines are kind of treating their passengers a little bit differently. So it's difficult for me to kind of speculate on that. So forgive me that.
Okay, no, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. Do you have any idea what percentage on average of people get rebooked from a cancellation?
I do not.
Okay, no worries. I'm just curious.
I could chime in and help a little bit with that.
Okay, sounds great.
I can't give you the actual breakdown on how many are rebooked and how many are not. It really comes down to the airlines, each one being a little bit different. However, a weather issue or things that the airlines cannot control, those become issues where the airline can decide to take responsibility for that with the passengers or not. most of our airlines step up and try to help the passengers when they are stranded here, especially in really busy times like we saw over the holiday weekends when you could be stuck for a couple of days because the seats can be booked out for a couple of days and getting rebooked can be a real challenge. Typically, our airlines will step up in those scenarios and try to get people booked into our hotels and take care of their food and things like that in those situations. But when it's an act of God, they don't have to. But if it's an airline issue, like a crew being out with Omicron, or they can't fill a cockpit with a pilot and a co-pilot, they have to take responsibility for those issues and make sure that those passengers are taken care of. Each airline may handle that differently or handle those situations differently. But when they do a mass cancellation like we saw with the winds on one day, that's a big decision the airlines make. And luckily, in today's world, they communicate electronically in a very great and strong way, because we used to have all those people show up at the airport and find out when they got here that they were canceled. So it's a much easier impact on us than it used to be, but we still feel for those passengers in the holidays when they're impacted like we've seen.
So those wins are considered an act of God and they don't qualify for refunds then?
They don't necessarily qualify, but a lot of the airlines, just out of good customer service, will step up and try to help those folks, especially in the holidays, because the PR on that is such a tough pill to swallow. They don't want to have to do that, and it certainly hurts their bottom line too. So they're usually working to help. They don't have to, but a lot of times they do because the PR on it can be so negative.
Okay. Alex, would you like to move to looking forward?
If you're okay with that, I would love that.
I don't see any other hands raised, so let's do it.
Okay, thank you. So the looking forward, what I would like to just mention a couple of items here. First of all, we started working on the fiscal year 23 budget. The personnel requests that you have seen here, so the 9 new positions, you will see a full impact of those additions into next fiscal year budget. And then also the new agreement that we have with the Teamsters group, also that would be reflected the full impact into next fiscal year. We also have a couple of capital projects that, as I mentioned, when we were talking about the mid-year request, namely the economy parking lot, you will see an additional $4 million approximately coming forward in next fiscal year just to do the construction of the parking lot itself. Looking at the airline traffic forecast, kind of, again, just looking forward at this point, maybe a little bit speculating as to what are we able to expect. I'm not seeing, talking with our air service group, I'm not going to put out a number at this point yet, and most likely there will be an increase, just not a double digit what we have seen here recently. We're getting close to being back to somewhat of a normal, especially from an airline traffic perspective. Staff is looking at some potential rate increases for both parking and ground transportation. Those would come forward to you during the budget process, and the master fee resolution would include those. You had heard from Shauna this morning about the new advertising program. We will include obviously any revenue impact there that came out from switching from Clear Channel to Lamar. Airline rates and charges may increase a little bit going into next fiscal year, just because, as you know, we have used the CARES Act as somewhat of a backstop, discounting some of those airline rates and charges in the current fiscal year and also the last 2 years there. The timing of the budget process. So first, once we have the request from all of the departments, we will have a review process with the executive team, board workshop scheduled in April. We will discuss the master fee resolution and the insurance program in May. Potentially, as I mentioned, some increases there that will be reflected in the master fee resolution. The insurance program, just to give you kind of a first indication of what I'm hearing there, most likely double-digit increases in most insurance lines. Specifically, cyber seems to be a problem moving forward. And then hopefully we will have a budget adopted for next fiscal year on May 19, 2022. And that concludes my presentation. Sorry, I know that I talked about a lot of numbers. I'm happy to answer any questions if you may still have some.
Does anybody have any additional questions? Brian, is that a new hand up for you or is that your old hand up?
That's an old hand.
Okay. Okay, Alex, it looks like we asked all of our questions along the way. So we will entertain a motion and I would be happy to move to approve this item 5.3. Can I get a second?
Jennifer Cunningham, second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Alex, and thank you, Brian, for chiming in and helping out with some of those questions. I appreciate both of you doing that for us.
Thank you.
All right, we are headed right to 5.4. Authorization for the president CEO to execute an equipment contract for the purchase of a refurbished Class 4 ARF apparatus for the Reno Tahoe Airport Authority's Airport Fire Department with the Station Inc. DBA Company 2 Fire for $450,000 plus a $10,000 delivery for a total of $460,000 and subject to final negotiated allowances of up to $95,000. And I believe we have a presentation by Dale Carnes.
Ma'am, good morning, Committee Chair Rose, trustees.
Good morning.
For the record, Dale Carnes, Fire Chief. I'm just giving me a second. I'm dealing with a little technological challenge here. And okay.
No worries. Take your time.
You need to click somewhere whenever it says more.
Share screen. There we go. Share.
Now go ahead and make this.
We can see it, Dale.
Thank goodness. And there we go.
Make sure they see this still.
All right. Good morning, everybody. The
morning.
purpose of this action this morning is to authorize the president and CEO to execute an equipment purchase contract for a Class 4 ARF apparatus for Reno Tahoe Airport Fire Department. The action is in support of the RTAA's strategic priorities as identified in the fiscal year 2019 through 2023 strategic plan. Specifically, priority number 4, safety and security, and priority number 7, employees are the current and future strength. A little background on this, FAR Part 139 mandates the size, type, and amount of ARF apparatus required at each airport based on the activity level of that airport. I'm sure most of you already know that we're an Index C airport, and because of that, we're required to have 2 fully operational ARF rigs on duty at all times with a total minimum of 3,000 gallons of water. Our current fleet consists of a 2001 and 2004 E1 apparatus and a 2016 Rosenbauer. Now the Rosenbauer is our first out rig, and the 2 E1s alternate back and forth between our second out and our reserve or backup rig. FAA guidelines require us to consider replacing our apparatus when they fall into one or more of several categories, but the big 3 are when reliability and serviceability is questionable, parts for repair are no longer available, and annual operating costs for that vehicle start to become excessive. Unfortunately for us, both of our E1s fall into all 3 of those categories. FAA guidance also suggests that we have a replacement plan that spans several years for our apparatus, and that is currently under development. Fiscal impact for this action, the base purchase price for this apparatus is $450,000. There's an additional delivery charge of $10,000 for the current interim leased vehicle that we're using. However, we will be receiving trade-in value for our 2 E1s of $35,000 and $30,000 respectively. Additionally, the leased payments that we are currently paying on the interim vehicle will be directly applied to the purchase price. It's normally a 4 to 6 month period of to refurb the vehicle once we purchase it. So we're estimating about 5 months, and that would further reduce the cost by $30,000. That would bring us to a total estimated net price, purchase price of $365,000. Now, it's important to note that this purchase is unbudgeted, and it will need to come from airport reserves, as it's not eligible for federal funding. So that brings us to our recommended motion. Staff recommends that the board authorize the president and CEO to execute an equipment contract for the purchase of a refurbished Class 4 ARF apparatus for the Reno Tahoe Airport Fire Department, with the station incorporated doing business as Company 2 for a base bid of $450,000 plus $10,000 for delivery purposes, for a grand total of $460,000. And I'd be glad to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Dale. I have a question for our legal and Morgan, please. His total and the total that we're authorizing are two different totals. So I'm just checking with you to make sure you want us to make the motion as written.
So as I understand, and if you can go back to and just look at the memo, as I understand it, the total purchase price is $460,000. We'll get some credits against that, but we do not know what those are. And that is why, not this motion, but as it's set in the agenda, it says total of $460 and subject to final negotiated allowances of up to $95,000. Is that what you're referring to?
The $95,000 doesn't include the trade-in value.
It does include the trade-in.
Oh, it does? Okay.
Yeah,
Yes,
see,
it
it's
does.
the combination of the 35, 30, and 30.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, I'm sorry, I misread that.
So I think the better motion would be to read it right as it comes off of the agenda. which
Okay,
is that you move to approve the purchase for $450 plus a $10,000 delivery charge for a total of $460, but subject to some final negotiated allowances of up to $95,000.
okay, all right, that sounds perfect. First, I'll see if, and thank you, Ann. I'll see if anybody has any questions for Mr. Carnes. Okay, if somebody wants to make a motion, if you could read it off 5.4, I'd be happy to do that. Okay, I will make a motion to approve authorization for the president CEO to execute an equipment contract for the purchase of a refurbished Class 4 ARF apparatus for the Reno Tahoe Airport Authority Airport Fire Department with the Station Inc. DBA Company 2 Fire for $450,000 plus $10,000 delivery for a total of $460,000, which is subject to final negotiated allowances of up to $95,000. So that is my motion. Do I have a second?
Richard J. second.
Okay, and before I call for the final vote, Mr. Carnes, I do have one question, and forgive my ignorance on this. How is this vehicle different from the last refurbished vehicle that we recently approved?
So the last vehicle that was approved, the refurbished one, that is a lease vehicle. And that is a stopgap for us to use while the one we're purchasing is actually being refurbished. The process, it's an NFPA level 2 refurbishment. It's highly detailed. There's a lot of upgrades that goes into it. The list of literally of action items is 7 pages long, and it takes between 4 to 6 months. And so with the current status of our 2 E1s being what they are, we are concerned about being able to maintain index and keeping the airport operating. So we developed a plan that we would lease one as a short-term stopgap during that refurbishment period, so we wouldn't have any gaps in coverage.
Perfect. Thank you for that. I wanted to make sure that we had that distinction on record. So I appreciate that. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, trustees.
Item number 6, member comments, questions, and requests for future agenda items. I have a super quick question. I just want to confirm with Lori that the normal planning and construction committee that follows this committee is officially canceled for today. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Perfect. Does anyone else have any questions, comments, or requests for future agenda items? Trustee Gianoli. You're frozen, so we're
I'm
gonna.
only going to remind everyone to do their financial disclosure because I just finished.
I'm so glad you said that because I
Yeah.
actually haven't done it yet.
Well, and I think it's due on the 15th. Just
It
because
is.
I did my, yeah, and I thought somewhere I'd read that it was the 30th, but
No, well, the email I got said that we have to do them by the 15th.
okay.
It's the
perfect.
15th, and don't make the mistake I did last year, and I thought I put it in. Double check and make sure that it has been accepted by the Secretary of State's office.
Yeah, that you actually sent it. Sorry, I'm
Correct.
having
I
like
thought
a
I did
bad.
last year,
I'm
and I
having
got
a
in
bad
trouble.
internet. Sorry if I'm interrupting.
You do have bad internet right now.
I'm freezing, but I'm getting a new router.
She freezes again.
Yep, there she goes,
Better
she's
on
frozen.
Thursday.
Does anyone else
freezing.
have any other questions or comments? Anything on the next agenda that you'd like to see? We're good. All right. Monthly administrative reports. Does anyone have any questions or comments on items 7.1 through 7.3? No? Okay, then I will call for my final public comment. Lori, do we have any public comment?
No public comment.
All right, in that case, this meeting will be adjourned and I'll see you all on Thursday. Have a great day.
Bye, thank you.
Have a great
Bye.
day.
Recording stopped.